In the heart of New York City, where skyscrapers touched the clouds and dreams were both made and shattered, there lived a man who had it all. His name was Alex Morgan, and at just 35 years old, he was one of the most successful people in the world. He owned companies that built cutting-edge technology, luxurious apartments, and even produced movies that played in theaters across the globe. People looked up to him as an inspiration, a self-made billionaire who worked hard, took risks, and turned his vision into reality. But behind the expensive suits, flashy cars, and endless meetings, Alex carried something heavy inside him. It wasn't something you could see on the outside. It was buried deep within his heart. You see, Alex grew up without his mother. She disappeared when he was only 5 years old, leaving him with more questions than answers. No one ever talked about her, not his father, not his relatives, no one. It was as if she had vanished from existence. As Alex got older, he tried to fill the emptiness by throwing himself into work. Building businesses became his way of proving himself, but no matter how much money he made or how many awards he won, the ache in his chest never went away. He often found himself staring out of his office window late at night, wondering what life would have been like if his mother had stayed. Did she leave because she didn't love him? Was it something he did? Or was there another reason entirely? Over the years, Alex hired private investigators to track down his mother. He gave them every detail he remembered, her laugh, her favorite songs, even the smell of her perfume. But each time, they came back empty-handed. The trail always went cold, and Alex eventually stopped looking. He convinced himself that maybe some mysteries weren't meant to be solved. But deep down, he still hoped for closure. Then one day, while scrolling through social media during a rare break, Alex stumbled upon a post that caught his eye. It was a picture of a small-town diner called Betty's Corner Cafe. In the photo, a waitress stood behind the counter, smiling warmly as she served coffee to customers. There was something about her face, something familiar, that made Alex pause. He zoomed in on the image, studying her features closely. Her eyes, they reminded him of someone he used to know. Curious, Alex clicked on the caption below the photo. It read, "Mary Johnson has been serving smiles and hot coffee at Betty's Corner Cafe for over 20 years. Stop by for a slice of pie and experience her kindness yourself." The name Mary Johnson didn't ring any bells, but her face haunted Alex. Could this woman really be connected to him? Or was he just imagining things because he wanted so badly to find his mother? Either way, he couldn't shake off the feeling that fate might finally be giving him a second chance. That weekend, instead of attending yet another business meeting, Alex decided to visit the diner. He told himself it was just curiosity. Nothing more. What harm could come from driving 2 hours outside the city to check out a tiny roadside cafe? Besides, he'd heard the apple pie there was legendary. When Alex arrived at Betty's Corner Cafe, he was struck by its charm. The place was cozy, with red and white checkered tablecloths, vintage posters on the walls, and the comforting aroma of freshly baked goods wafting through the air. He took a seat at the counter and pulled out his phone, pretending to focus on emails while secretly glancing around the room. A few moments later, a soft voice greeted him. "What can I get for you, hun?" Alex looked up and froze. Standing in front of him was the same woman from the photo, the waitress with the kind smile. Up close, she looked even more familiar. Her hair was streaked with gray now, and lines creased her face, but her eyes sparkled with warmth and wisdom. For a split second, Alex felt like he was 5 years old again, sitting at the kitchen table while his mother poured him a glass of milk. "I'll have a slice of your famous apple pie," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. As she jotted down his order, Alex noticed the name tag pinned to her uniform. Mary Johnson. While waiting for his dessert, Alex struck up a conversation with her. At first, it was casual, just small talk about the weather and how long she'd worked at the diner. But then, almost instinctively, he asked, "Do you have kids?" Mary hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes, I do. A son. But we lost touch years ago." Her tone softened, tinged with sadness. "Life Well, it doesn't always turn out the way you plan. Her words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. He leaned forward, his curiosity growing stronger. What happened? He asked gently. She sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. It's a long story. Let's just say, circumstances forced me to make choices I didn't want to make, choices that took me far away from the people I loved. Alex listened intently, his mind racing. Everything she said resonated with him. The pain of separation, the longing for connection, the regret of missed opportunities. By the time his pie arrived, he knew he couldn't leave without finding out more. This woman, this kind and humble waitress might hold the key to unlocking the mystery of his past. Little did Alex know, this simple trip to a roadside diner would change his life forever. What started as a craving for pie was about to become the beginning of a journey toward healing, forgiveness, and rediscovery. The diner was quiet, save for the soft hum of chatter from a few other customers and the faint clinking of plates being stacked in the kitchen. Alex sat at the counter, his pie half-eaten but forgotten. His mind was racing with questions, each one more urgent than the last. This woman, Mary, had mentioned having a son she'd lost touch with. Could it really be him? Was this the mother he'd spent decades searching for? Trying to keep his tone casual, Alex leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the counter. So what's your son like? He asked, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside him. Mary paused, her hand still gripping the coffee pot she'd been refilling for another customer. She looked thoughtful, as if she were flipping through pages of memories, stored deep in her mind. He was special, she said finally, her voice soft but filled with warmth. Even as a little boy, he had this spark about him. Smart, curious, always asking questions. A small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. He loved building things, towers out of blocks, forts out of blankets, you name it. I used to joke that he'd grow up to build skyscrapers. Alex felt his chest tighten. Every word she spoke sounded like a description of his childhood self. He remembered those days vividly, the endless hours spent constructing imaginary worlds, dreaming of something bigger, better, and yet hearing her talk about him now, as though he were someone else entirely, made his heart ache in ways he couldn't explain. What happened between you two? Alex pressed gently, careful not to push too hard. If you don't mind me asking. Mary hesitated again, her smile fading into something sadder, heavier. She set the coffee pot down and turned to face him fully, leaning against the counter. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stared off into the distance as if gathering the courage to speak. It's complicated, she began slowly. Back then, life wasn't easy for us. We didn't have much money and, well, let's just say some people didn't want me to raise him the way I wanted to. Her voice faltered briefly, and Alex noticed the faintest tremble in her hands. I did what I thought was best for him, even if it meant letting him go. I told myself he'd have a better future without me. Her words hit Alex like a freight train. Letting him go? Was she saying what he thought she was saying? His pulse quickened and he struggled to keep his composure. He needed to know more, but how could he ask without revealing too much? You must miss him, Alex said softly, his own voice cracking under the weight of emotion. I mean, losing touch with someone so important, that can't be easy. Mary nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Every day, she admitted, there isn't a single morning I don't wake up wondering where he is, if he's happy, if he knows how much I love him. But after all these years, she trailed off, shrugging helplessly. I guess I've learned to live with the uncertainty. Alex swallowed hard, his throat dry despite the glass of water sitting untouched beside his plate. He wanted to tell her right then and there, to blurt out who he was and throw his arms around her, but something held him back. Maybe it was fear. Fear that he was wrong, that this wasn't really his mother. Or maybe it was the realization that finding her was only the first step. The real challenge would be figuring out how to reconnect after so many years apart. Instead of saying anything, Alex changed the subject slightly, hoping to learn more without giving himself away. Do you ever think about trying to find him again? He asked. With everything we have nowadays, social media, private investigators, it seems like it wouldn't be impossible. Mary chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. Oh, I've thought about it plenty, she said. But what if he doesn't want to see me? What if he blames me for leaving? Some wounds never heal, no matter how much time passes. Her honesty struck a chord deep within Alex. He understood that fear all too well. For years he'd wondered why his mother left, assuming the worst, that she simply didn't care enough to stay. Now, hearing her perspective, he realized it wasn't that simple. There were layers to her story, complexities he'd never considered. Before he could respond, a group of teenagers burst into the diner, laughing and joking loudly as they slid into a booth near the window. Mary excused herself to take their order, leaving Alex alone with his thoughts. He watched her move gracefully between tables, chatting with customers and refilling drinks with practiced ease. Despite the years that had passed, there was still a kindness about her, an authenticity that drew people in. It reminded him of the stories his father used to reluctantly share, stories of a woman who lit up every room she entered. When Mary returned to the counter a few minutes later, Alex decided to test the waters further. You know, he said, casually, you remind me of someone I once knew, someone very close to me. Her eyebrows shot up in surprise. Really? Who? My mom, Alex replied, holding her gaze. She disappeared when I was a kid. I haven't seen her since. For a split second, Mary froze, her expression unreadable. Then, almost imperceptibly, her shoulders sagged, and her eyes widened with recognition. She studied his face intently, as if searching for something familiar. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. How old are you? 35, Alex answered immediately, his heart pounding in his chest. Mary's hand flew to her mouth and tears began streaming down her cheeks. Oh my God, she breathed, shaking her head in disbelief. It's you. It's really you. Time seemed to stand still as the truth hung heavy in the air between them. Alex's breath caught in his throat, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Finally, he managed to choke out the words he'd waited decades to say. Mom? Mary nodded, sobbing openly now. Yes, she whispered. It's me. I'm here. And just like that, the dam broke. Decades of longing, regret, and unanswered questions poured out in an overwhelming flood of emotion. They embraced across the counter, ignoring the curious stares of other diners. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the years they'd lost, not the pain they'd endured, not the secrets that still needed to be uncovered. All that mattered was that they had found each other again. As they pulled apart, Mary wiped her tears with the edge of her apron, laughing through her sobs. I can't believe this is happening, she said, shaking her head in wonder. After all these years. Neither can I, Alex admitted, his own eyes brimming with tears. But I'm glad it is. They spent the next hour talking nonstop, sharing pieces of their lives bit by bit. Mary explained how she'd ended up in the small town, working at the diner to support herself after fleeing an abusive relationship. Alex listened intently, his heart breaking for the hardships she'd endured. In turn, he told her about his rise to success, how he'd built his empire from scratch in hopes of proving himself to a world that often felt cold and unforgiving. By the time Alex left the diner that evening, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the quiet streets. He climbed into his car, his mind reeling from everything that had transpired. Finding his mother was just the beginning. Now came the hard part, rebuilding the bond they'd lost and learning to trust each other again. But as he drove back toward the city, one thing was certain. His life would never be the same. The drive back to New York City felt like a blur. Alex gripped the steering wheel tightly, his mind replaying every moment of the encounter at the diner. The tears, the laughter, the raw emotion. It all seemed surreal, as if it had been lifted, straight out of a movie. But this wasn't fiction. It was real life. And now he had to figure out what came next. For years, Alex had imagined finding his mother. In his dreams, the reunion was always perfect. Hugs, smiles, and an instant connection that erased decades of separation. But reality was messier. Yes, they had found each other, but there were still so many unanswered questions. Why did she leave? How could she stay away for so long? Did she regret her decision? These thoughts swirled in his head, making it hard to focus on anything else. When he finally arrived home, Alex poured himself a glass of water and sat by the window, staring out at the glittering city below. Normally, this view calmed him, reminding him of how far he'd come. Tonight, though, it felt hollow. Success meant nothing without someone to share it with. Someone who truly understood where he came from and why he worked so hard. He knew he couldn't move forward without answers. So the next morning, Alex called his most trusted private investigator. "I need you to dig deeper," he said firmly. "Find everything you can about Mary Johnson. I want to know her full story, the good, the bad, and everything in between." Over the next few days, Alex threw himself into work, using meetings and phone calls as a distraction. But no matter how busy he kept himself, his thoughts kept drifting back to his mother. He wondered what she was doing at that very moment. Was she thinking about him too? Did she feel the same mix of excitement and fear that he did? Finally, the investigator's report arrived. Sitting alone in his office, Alex opened the file with trembling hands. What he read inside confirmed what Mary had hinted at during their conversation, but it also revealed details that broke his heart. According to the documents, Mary had been trapped in an abusive marriage after Alex's birth. His father, Alex's biological father, had controlled every aspect of her life, isolating her from friends and family and cutting off her access to money. When Mary finally mustered the courage to leave, she feared for her safety and Alex's. She believed staying would put both of them in danger, while leaving, even if it meant giving him up, was the only way to ensure his survival. The report included court records showing that Alex's father had manipulated the legal system to gain full custody of their son. With no financial resources or support network, Mary had no choice but to disappear. She changed her name to Mary Johnson and started over in a small town, working odd jobs to survive. Over time, she built a quiet, humble life for herself, but the pain of losing her child never faded. As Alex flipped through the pages, he felt a surge of anger, not toward his mother, but toward the circumstances that had torn them apart. For years, he'd blamed her for leaving, assuming she didn't care enough to fight for him. Now, he realized just how wrong he'd been. She hadn't abandoned him. She had sacrificed everything to protect him. With the truth laid bare, Alex faced a new challenge. How to approach Mary. Should he call her, visit her again, or give her space to process everything? He wanted desperately to reconnect, but he also didn't want to overwhelm her. After all, she had spent decades believing she'd never see him again. In the end, Alex decided to write her a letter. Words flowed easily as he poured his heart onto the page. He thanked her for the sacrifices she'd made, apologized for blaming her all these years, and assured her that he wanted nothing more than to rebuild their relationship. He enclosed a photo of himself as a child, holding her hand at a park. A memory she might not even remember, but one he hoped would bring her comfort. A week later, Alex received a reply. Mary's handwriting was shaky but heartfelt. She wrote about how guilty she felt for leaving, how she prayed every night that Alex would forgive her. She admitted she'd been terrified when he walked into the diner, afraid he wouldn't recognize her, or worse, that he'd hate her. But seeing him again had given her hope, a chance to make things right. Encouraged by her response, Alex arranged to visit her again. This time he didn't go to the diner. Instead, he drove to her modest apartment on the outskirts of town. When she opened the door, her face lit up with a mixture of surprise and joy. Without hesitation, Alex pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her as if he never wanted to let go. They spent hours talking, piecing together the fragments of their lives. Mary told him stories about his childhood, how he used to giggle uncontrollably, During bath time, how he insisted on wearing cowboy boots everywhere, even to bed. Alex laughed until his sides hurt, marveling at how vividly she remembered those moments. In turn, Alex shared glimpses of his adult life, the struggles of starting his first company, the loneliness of living in a penthouse overlooking a city that never slept, the constant search for something he couldn't quite name. Through it all, Mary listened intently, nodding and smiling, occasionally wiping away tears. At one point, she reached out and took his hand. "You've done so well for yourself," she said proudly. "I always knew you would. Even when I wasn't there to see it, I believed in you." Her words brought tears to Alex's eyes. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen. Not as a billionaire or a CEO, but as a person, a son, someone who mattered simply because he existed. As the afternoon turned into evening, Alex realized he didn't want to leave. He suggested, inviting her to stay with him in the city, offering her a chance to experience the life she'd dreamed of for him. At first, Mary hesitated, unsure if she belonged in such a glamorous world. But Alex reassured her, promising that she'd always have a place by his side. Before heading back, Alex promised to return soon. As he hugged her goodbye, he whispered, "We're going to fix this, Mom. Together." And for the first time in decades, Alex felt a sense of peace. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. They still had wounds to heal and trust to rebuild, but they were no longer alone. They had each other, and that was enough. The days following their emotional reunion passed in a whirlwind of anticipation for both Alex and Mary. For Alex, the decision to invite his mother into his life again felt like stepping onto shaky ground. He knew it wouldn't be easy. After all, decades of silence couldn't just vanish overnight, but he was determined to make things right. For Mary, the idea of leaving her quiet, predictable world behind and stepping into the fast-paced chaos of New York City seemed daunting. But deep down, she wanted nothing more than to reconnect with the son she had sacrificed so much to protect. When Alex arrived at her apartment the next weekend, Mary greeted him with a nervous smile. She wore a simple dress, her hair neatly tied back, and carried a small suitcase packed with essentials. "I hope I didn't overpack," she joked lightly, though her voice betrayed a hint of uncertainty. "You're perfect," Alex replied warmly, taking the suitcase from her hands. "And don't worry, we'll take this one step at a time." The drive back to the city was filled with comfortable conversation. They talked about everything: the weather, old movies they both loved, and even the diner where they'd first reunited. Mary marveled at how different the landscape looked as they approached Manhattan: the towering skyscrapers, the endless stream of yellow cabs, the energy buzzing through the streets. It was a far cry from the sleepy little town she called home. When they finally reached Alex's penthouse apartment, Mary stepped inside and gasped. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Central Park below, while sleek furniture and modern art adorned every corner. "This is incredible," she said softly, running her fingers along the edge of a marble countertop. "It's just a place." Alex shrugged, watching her reaction closely. "What matters is who's here now." Mary turned to look at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you for bringing me here, sweetheart. I know it can't have been easy." Alex smiled, but there was a flicker of sadness in his expression. "Nothing about this has been easy, for either of us. But we're here now, and that's what counts." Over the next few weeks, they settled into a rhythm. Mary adjusted to city life slowly, exploring neighborhoods, trying new foods, and marveling at the hustle and bustle around her. Meanwhile, Alex introduced her to his world, his friends, his colleagues, the people who played important roles in his life. At first, Mary felt out of place among the polished businessmen and glamorous socialites, but Alex made sure to remind her that she belonged. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Alex invited Mary to join him on the balcony, overlooking the park. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. "How are you feeling?" he asked gently, handing her a cup of tea. Mary took a sip before answering. It's strange, she admitted. Being here feels like living someone else's life. Like I'm seeing the future I always imagined for you, but I never thought I'd get to be part of it. Alex nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Do you regret coming? No, she said quickly, shaking her head. Not at all. It's just overwhelming sometimes. I've spent so many years thinking I lost you forever. Now having you back, it's almost too good to be true. Her honesty struck a chord deep within Alex. He reached out and placed a hand over hers. I feel the same way, he confessed. For years, I thought finding you was impossible, and now that I have, I don't want to waste another second. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, but healing wasn't without its challenges. There were moments when old wounds resurfaced, especially during late-night conversations when memories spilled out like water breaking through a dam. One particularly difficult evening, Mary broke down while recounting the night she left Alex's father. She described the fear, the helplessness, the guilt of knowing she might never see her son again. I told myself it was the only way, she sobbed, clutching a tissue tightly. But some nights I wondered if I made the wrong choice, if I should have stayed and fought harder. Alex listened silently, his heart aching for the pain she endured. When she finished speaking, he pulled her into a hug. You did what you had to do, he said firmly. And because of that, I'm here today, safe, successful, alive. Don't ever doubt that, Mom. Hearing those words, Mom, brought fresh tears to Mary's eyes, but this time they were tears of relief. For so long she had carried the weight of her decisions alone. Now finally she had someone to share the burden with. As they continued to rebuild their relationship, Alex realized how much he still had to learn about his mother. She wasn't just the woman who gave birth to him. She was a person with dreams, fears, and a story of her own. Determined to honor her sacrifices, Alex decided to do something special. One Saturday morning, he surprised Mary by taking her back to Betty's Corner Cafe, the diner where they first reunited. When they walked in, the staff greeted her warmly, clearly thrilled to see her. Alex led her to a table near the window and handed her an envelope. What's this? Mary asked, raising an eyebrow. Open it, Alex urged, smiling. Inside the envelope was a letter and a check. The amount written on it was enough to renovate the entire diner, transforming it into a community hub for struggling single parents, like she once was. Mary stared at the paper in disbelief, her hands trembling. Why would you do this? She whispered, looking up at him. Because you deserve it, Alex said simply, and because I want to help others who might be going through what you went through. This diner gave me the chance to find you again. Now I want to give it, and everyone who walks through those doors, a brighter future. Tears streamed down Mary's face as she hugged him tightly. You're amazing, you know that? She murmured. I'm so proud of the man you've become. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the diner and the love of his mother, Alex felt whole for the first time in his life. Money, success, fame, they were all fleeting. What truly mattered was connection, the bond between a mother and her son, strengthened by forgiveness, resilience, and unconditional love. As they sat together, sharing laughter and stories, Alex realized something profound. Finding his mother hadn't just healed the past, it had also given him a future full of possibilities. Together, they could face anything. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between Alex and Mary grew stronger with each passing moment. Their lives, once separated by pain and misunderstanding, began to intertwine in ways neither of them could have imagined. While Alex introduced his mother to the luxuries of city life, fine dining, art galleries, and rooftop parties, he also made sure to honor the simplicity she cherished. Together, they found a balance that worked for both of them. Mornings spent sipping coffee on the balcony, afternoons exploring neighborhoods, and evenings sharing stories over home-cooked meals. But it wasn't just about adapting to each other's worlds. Both Alex and Mary knew there were still scars from the past that needed healing. They couldn't rewrite history, but they could face it together. And that's exactly what they did. One evening, as they sat side by side on the couch, flipping through old photo albums Alex had dug up from storage, Mary paused at a picture of her younger self holding a toddler version of Alex. Her eyes softened, and she traced the edges of the photograph with her fingertips. "Do you remember this day?" she asked softly. Alex leaned closer to get a better look. In the photo, he was wearing a red baseball cap, grinning ear to ear while clutching an oversized stuffed bear almost as big as he was. "Vaguely," he admitted. "That must have been my birthday, right? Dad got me that bear." Mary nodded, her expression bittersweet. "Yes, it was your 4th birthday. I remember how excited you were when you saw it. You wouldn't let go of that thing for weeks." She chuckled lightly, but then her voice grew quieter. "I didn't realize back then that it would be one of our last happy birthdays together." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Alex reached out and placed a hand on hers. "Mom," he said gently, "you don't have to carry all of this guilt anymore. We can't change what happened, but we can choose how we move forward. Together." Mary looked at him, tears glistening in her eyes. For so many years she had shouldered the burden of her choices alone, convinced that she didn't deserve forgiveness. But hearing those words from her son, the man she had given everything to protect, was like a balm to her wounded soul. She squeezed his hand tightly, unable to find the words to express how much his acceptance meant to her. As their relationship deepened, Alex became increasingly determined to help Mary reclaim pieces of her identity that had been lost over the years. He knew she had spent decades living in fear, hiding from the shadows of her past. Now it was time for her to step into the light, not just as his mother, but as a woman who deserved recognition and respect. One afternoon, while going through some old documents related to his father's estate, Alex stumbled upon something shocking. It turned out that his father hadn't acted alone in keeping Mary away. He had enlisted the help of influential business partners to smear her reputation and ensure she stayed out of their lives. The revelation infuriated Alex. How dare anyone treat his mother this way? How dare they strip her of her dignity and humanity? Fueled by a mix of anger and determination, Alex decided to take action. With Mary's permission, he reached out to the same private investigator who had helped uncover her story and asked him to dig deeper into the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. What they uncovered was startling. Evidence of financial manipulation, false accusations, and even threats designed to keep Mary silent and isolated. Armed with the truth, Alex confronted the individuals involved. Some denied any wrongdoing, while others sheepishly admitted to following orders without questioning the morality of their actions. Regardless of their responses, Alex made it clear that he wouldn't stand for injustice. Not now, not ever. Using his influence and resources, he worked tirelessly to clear Mary's name, ensuring that everyone knew the truth about the courageous woman she was. When Mary learned what Alex had done, she was overwhelmed with emotion. "You didn't have to do all of this for me," she said, her voice trembling. "I've lived with the consequences of my choices for so long. I never expected anyone to fight for me." "You're my mom," Alex replied simply, "and no one gets to treat you like you're invisible or unimportant. Not anymore." Their journey toward healing wasn't limited to confronting the past. It also involved creating new memories. One weekend, Alex surprised Mary with tickets to a Broadway show, a musical she had always wanted to see but never had the chance to experience. As they sat together in the theater, surrounded by glittering lights and soaring melodies, Mary leaned over and whispered, "This feels like a dream." "It's real," Alex assured her, smiling, "and it's only the beginning." After the show, they strolled through Times Square, taking in the vibrant energy of the city. Tourists snapped photos, street performers entertained crowds, and neon signs illuminated the night sky. Mary stopped in front of a giant digital billboard displaying an advertisement for one of Alex's companies. "Is that yours?" she asked, pointing upward. Alex nodded modestly. Yeah, it is. Mary shook her head in disbelief. I still can't believe you built all of this. From nothing. I didn't build it alone, Alex corrected her. Everything I am, everything I've accomplished, it started with you. You taught me to dream big even when life felt small. His words brought tears to her eyes, but they were tears of pride. For the first time in decades, Mary allowed herself to feel the full weight of her son's love and admiration. She realized that despite the hardships she had endured, she had raised a remarkable human being, someone who valued kindness, integrity, and family above all else. As word of their reunion spread, Alex and Mary became local celebrities of sorts. News outlets picked up their story, dubbing it the ultimate second chance. Strangers reached out to share their own experiences of loss, forgiveness, and redemption, inspired by the courage it took for both Alex and Mary to confront their pasts and embrace the future. But fame wasn't what mattered most to them. What truly mattered was the connection they had rebuilt, a bond rooted in honesty, vulnerability, and unconditional love. Whether they were laughing over breakfast, reminiscing about old memories, or simply sitting quietly together watching the sunset, they cherished every moment they had been given. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking Central Park, Mary turned to Alex and said, I used to think I'd lost you forever, that I'd made a mistake I could never fix. But now I know I was wrong. We're here and we're okay. That's all that matters. Alex wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. We're more than okay, Mom. We're starting over. And this time, nothing will tear us apart. With those words, they stepped into the next chapter of their lives, not as two people defined by loss, but as a mother and son united by hope, resilience, and the power of forgiveness. As months passed, the bond between Alex and Mary blossomed into something neither of them had dared to dream about. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when old wounds surfaced, reminders of the years they'd lost. But what mattered most was that they faced those challenges together. They weren't just rebuilding their relationship. They were creating a new one, rooted in honesty, patience, and love. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled outside the penthouse windows, Alex woke up with an idea buzzing in his mind. He had spent weeks planning it, wanting to do something meaningful not only for his mother but also for others like her, people who had been overlooked or mistreated by society. Today was the day he would bring that idea to life. Mom, Alex said over breakfast, I want you to come with me somewhere special today. Mary raised an eyebrow, curious but cautious. Special? What kind of special? You'll see, Alex replied with a mischievous grin. Just trust me. After finishing their meal, Alex led her downstairs to the car. Instead of heading toward the usual spots they visited, parks, museums, or cafes, they drove out of the city and back to the small town where Betty's Corner Cafe stood. When they arrived, Mary noticed something different immediately. The diner looked brand new. Fresh paint covered the exterior, flower boxes adorned the windows, and a bright sign above the door read, Mary's Community Hub. What is this? Mary asked, her voice tinged with awe and confusion. Alex took her hand and guided her inside. The transformation was breathtaking. The once modest diner now felt warm and inviting, filled with cozy seating areas, bookshelves stocked with donated novels, and bulletin boards displaying resources for single parents, survivors of abuse, and anyone seeking help. A group of volunteers bustled around, setting up tables and arranging food for a community lunch. This is incredible, Mary whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. But why did you do all this? For you, Alex said simply, his tone full of emotion. You gave me everything, Mom, even when it cost you everything. This place is my way of saying thank you. It's a space where people can find support, connection, and hope, just like I found with you. Mary turned to him, speechless. For so long she had believed she didn't deserve recognition or kindness. But standing there, surrounded by evidence of her son's gratitude, she finally allowed herself to accept it. She hugged him tightly, unable to hold back her tears. The grand opening of Mary's community hub brought the entire town together. Locals poured in to celebrate, sharing stories, laughter, and homemade dishes. The diner buzzed with energy, its walls echoing with the sounds of joy and camaraderie. Mary stood at the center of it all, greeting guests and thanking everyone who had contributed to making the hub a reality. At one point during the event, Alex stepped onto a small stage set up near the entrance. Holding a microphone, he addressed the crowd. "When I first walked into this diner months ago, I had no idea how much it would change my life," he began, his voice steady but heartfelt. "I came here looking for pie, but instead I found my mom. And through her, I learned the true meaning of sacrifice, resilience, and unconditional love." He paused, glancing at Mary, who smiled proudly despite the tears streaming down her face. "This place isn't just a tribute to her. It's a reminder that we're stronger when we stand together, that no matter what hardships we face, there's always hope for a second chance." The audience erupted into applause, cheering for both Alex and Mary. Strangers approached them afterward, sharing their own struggles and expressing gratitude for the safe haven the hub provided. One woman, a young mother juggling 2 jobs, while raising her kids alone, hugged Mary tightly and whispered, "Thank you for showing us that we're not alone." In the weeks and months that followed, Mary's community hub became a cornerstone of the community. People dropped by not just for coffee and pie, but for advice, friendship, and encouragement. Mary embraced her role as its matriarch, offering wisdom and warmth to everyone who crossed her path. Watching her thrive in this new chapter of her life filled Alex with immense pride. But perhaps the most profound change occurred within Alex himself. Growing up, he had equated success with wealth, power, and influence. Now he understood that true fulfillment came from connection, from knowing that his actions could make a difference in someone else's life. Whether it was helping his mother heal or giving back to the community, Alex discovered a deeper purpose than building empires. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of his penthouse apartment overlooking the glittering city below, Mary turned to Alex with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if I hadn't left?" she asked softly. Alex hesitated before answering. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I think about all the things that happened because of it, the lessons I learned, the person I became. And honestly, Mom, I wouldn't trade any of it, not even the hard parts, because it led me right here to you." Mary smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You know, I used to think I failed as a mother, that I let you down in every possible way, but now—" She paused, shaking her head. "Now I realize I didn't fail. I just needed time and a little help to find my way back to you." "And I needed time to understand why you left," Alex added. "We both made mistakes, but look at us now. We're okay. Better than okay." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights twinkle like stars against the night sky. Despite the noise and chaos surrounding them, they felt a profound sense of peace, a quiet certainty that they had finally come home to each other. Their story inspired countless others, sparking conversations about forgiveness, resilience, and the importance of second chances. News outlets covered their journey, calling it a testament to the power of love. Social media lit up with messages from strangers sharing their own tales of loss, hope, and redemption. Through it all, Alex and Mary remained humble, focusing not on fame but on the impact they could have on the world around them. As winter approached, blanketing the city in snow, Alex and Mary continued to build their new life together. They celebrated holidays, explored new places, and created memories that would last a lifetime. Each day brought fresh opportunities to grow closer, to laugh harder, and to love deeper. On New Year's Eve, as fireworks exploded overhead and the clock struck midnight, Alex raised a glass to toast his mother. "To second chances," he said, smiling. "And to finding home again." Mary clinked her glass against his, her heart swelling with gratitude. "To family," she replied, "because no matter where life takes us, nothing matters more than the people we love." And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, they knew they had found exactly what they had been searching for all along, a place to belong. As spring rolled around, the world seemed to bloom with new beginnings. not just for Alex and Mary, but for everyone whose lives they touched. The community hub had become more than just a diner. It was a sanctuary, a place where people felt seen and valued. Every day brought fresh faces through its doors, some seeking refuge from life's storms, others looking for connection or simply a warm meal. And at the heart of it all stood Mary, welcoming each person with open arms and an unwavering smile. For Alex, watching his mother thrive in this role filled him with a sense of purpose he'd never experienced before. Sure, building companies and closing million-dollar deals gave him a thrill, but nothing compared to seeing the tangible impact of kindness. He started spending less time in boardrooms and more time at the hub, rolling up his sleeves to help, however he could. Whether it was organizing workshops, mentoring local teens, or even washing dishes during busy shifts, Alex threw himself into the work wholeheartedly. One sunny afternoon, as Alex helped unload boxes of donated groceries outside the hub, a young boy tugged on his sleeve. "Are you the guy who owns this place?" the child asked, wide-eyed. Alex knelt down to meet him at eye level. "Not exactly," he said with a grin. "This place belongs to my mom and to everyone who needs it." The boy nodded solemnly, clutching a worn backpack tightly. "My dad says you're a hero." Alex chuckled softly, ruffling the boy's hair. "Tell your dad I'm no hero. Just someone trying to make things a little better." But deep down, Alex realized that maybe the boy's father had a point. Heroes didn't always wear capes or save the world in dramatic ways. Sometimes they were ordinary people doing what they could to lift others up. And if helping his mother rebuild her life and giving back to the community made him a hero in someone's eyes, then so be it. Mary, meanwhile, found herself rediscovering parts of herself she thought were long gone. For years, she had lived quietly, keeping her head down and avoiding attention. Now, surrounded by people who appreciated her wisdom and warmth, she began to step out of her comfort zone. She started leading support groups for women who had survived abusive relationships, sharing her story openly, and encouraging others to find strength in their own journeys. "It's not easy to leave behind what you know," she told a group one evening, her voice steady yet gentle. "I spent decades running from my past thinking I wasn't strong enough to face it. But here's the thing. You are stronger than you think. You just need to believe in yourself, and let others believe in you too." Her words resonated deeply with those who listened, many of whom stayed after the meeting to thank her personally. One woman, tears streaming down her face, hugged Mary tightly and whispered, "You saved me tonight. Thank you for reminding me that I'm not alone." Seeing the difference she was making lit a fire in Mary's heart. She poured herself into the work, determined to create a safe space where people could heal and grow. And though she often grew tired from the long hours, she never complained. This was her calling now, a chance to rewrite her legacy and prove that love and resilience could overcome even the darkest chapters of life. As summer approached, Alex decided to take things a step further. Inspired by the success of the IGA Hub, he launched a foundation aimed at supporting single parents across the country. Through grants, scholarships, and partnerships with local organizations, the foundation provided resources to help families break cycles of poverty and abuse. It was named after Mary, of course, a tribute to the woman who had taught him the value of sacrifice and compassion. At the launch event, held in a grand ballroom filled with philanthropists, activists, and media personalities, Alex delivered a speech that left the audience in tears. "When I first met my mom again," he began, his voice trembling with emotion, "I saw the weight she carried, the guilt, the fear, the loneliness. But I also saw her courage, her determination to keep moving forward despite everything life threw at her. That's why we're here today, to honor her spirit and extend a hand to others who might feel like giving up." He paused, glancing toward the front row where Mary sat, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "We can't change the past," he continued, "but we can choose how we respond to it. We can choose to build bridges instead of walls, to offer hope instead of judgment. Together, we can create a world where no one has to suffer in silence." The room erupted into applause, and when Alex stepped off the stage, Mary rushed to embrace him. "I don't know what I did to deserve a son like you," she murmured, her voice choked with emotion. You gave me everything I needed to be who I am today, Alex replied, holding her close. That's what you did. Life wasn't without its challenges, of course. There were days when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming, and moments when doubt crept in. But through it all, Alex and Mary leaned on each other, drawing strength from the bond they had worked so hard to rebuild. They celebrated victories big and small and faced setbacks with resilience and grace. One evening, as they strolled along the park near the hub, Mary turned to Alex with a thoughtful expression. Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been if we hadn't lost touch? Alex considered the question for a moment. Maybe we wouldn't have appreciated each other as much, he said finally. Sometimes it takes losing something to realize how much it means to you. Mary nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. I guess that's true. Still, I wish I could go back and tell my younger self not to give up hope. That someday, somehow, everything would work out. Well, Alex said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. You don't need to go back. You're living proof that hope is real, and that second chances are possible. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the setting sun casting long shadows across the path. Despite the hardships they had endured, they felt a profound sense of gratitude for each other, for the community they had built, and for the future that lay ahead. As they reached the end of the trail, Mary stopped and looked up at Alex. You know, she said, her voice full of warmth, I used to think I failed as a mother, but now I think I got pretty lucky, because somehow I ended up with the best son anyone could ask for. Alex smiled, his heart swelling with love. And I got the best mom, he replied, even if it took us a lifetime to find our way back to each other. With that, they headed home together, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. Their journey had been far from easy, but it had led them to something priceless, a family reunited, a community transformed, and a shared belief that no matter how dark the night, the dawn will always come.